It's the greatest political comeback in American political history. Yesterday, the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. It follows, of course, the attempted insurrection and assault on the Capitol in January 2021. The then 45th President was out for the count. Many in his own party openly embarrassed by his refusal to accept defeat. But yesterday, there he was, with Joe Biden riding in the limousine with the man he defeated and who didn't accord him the courtesy of attending his inauguration. And Trump has wasted no time to stamp his authority on America. We're joined now by Redi Tlhabi, award-winning international journalist, moderator and author, and a familiar voice on this station, certainly. Redi, it's a sad morning for democracy around the world. I mean, we've all seen second-term inaugurations before, but nothing quite like the world watched yesterday.
Absolutely not. And of course, Trump then becomes one of just two U.S. presidents to return to the White House after losing re-election 4 years earlier. Let's be clear, MAGA is very happy. A whole lot of Republicans are very happy. The tech billionaires are very, very happy. And those people who don't believe in reproductive rights, in the climate emergency, they're very happy. So I think it's important to say that otherwise he wouldn't have won the election. But I can tell you here in D.C., where I am, Bongani, this is a Democrat stronghold. It feels like it's a massive funeral. And I actually observed that in my neighborhood, and DC is quite small, so you've got to imagine it like a Groenkloof, it feels a little bit more like a Pretoria suburb, that the Kamala and Waltz placards are still on pavements today. They're just people who haven't accepted this outcome. But of course, it's not just about preferring this candidate over the other. It's about the substantive issues that you've alluded to. You're saying that many people who embrace democracy will be mourning. Of course, he's just signed an executive order pulling the US out of the World Health Organization, out of the Paris Climate Accord, reversing the citizenship, the birthrights of children who were born here legally to parents who were not here legally, asylum rights, cost of prescription drugs for those who are on Medicaid. So there are real substantive issues that are being felt, and they will be felt for years to come.
Redi, there's still a sense of shock around the world. Many leaders would have assumed they'd seen the last of Donald Trump. And in a sense, we can perhaps look back on his first term and get a sense of what he might do next. But how do international capitals factor in the reality of Donald Trump 2.0?
I think those who are identifying as liberal democracies, those who identify as citizens of the globe, as it were, and by that I'm alluding to multilateralism, they don't have a plan, Bongani. They don't have a plan, because here's a guy who is putting America first, and you may say, of course, that's what you ought to do. But we know that we've had world wars, and there was a reason. You have these accords, you've got multilateralism to prevent the kind of degenerative behavior, but it hasn't held. And Donald Trump is simply unraveling that kind of order. And I think what they will do, you asked me this question the last time we spoke about what NATO is going to do, what the EU is going to do. They're going to have to be a little bit more self-reliant. And then closer from a military point of view and economics point of view, here's Donald Trump threatening tariffs against Canada, 26%, against Mexico. And you know, Bongani, I want to say this and say it as clearly as possible. There are people who, when they approach international relations, they don't see the symbiosis between different states. Of course, one state may need the other more than the other needs it, but the rule is that we all need each other. The idea that Canada is so small that it is irrelevant or the US won't suffer if it imposes sanctions. The US will suffer. What does it get from Canada? Vehicles, material to make batteries, clean energy, wood. The US does get a lot from Canada. It gets fruit, vegetables. It gets plastics and other material from Mexico. So all I'm saying is that there could be a trade deficit between one state and the other, but there is no state that can function in isolation. And we tend to watch too many movies and think that the United States doesn't need anyone. The United States does need the rest of the world, and global trade and the kind of the inflation-inducing mechanisms of a Trump-led presidency are going to be felt the world over.
The curtain, of course, fell on a long career for Joe Biden, who leaves behind, I would argue, a battered legacy.
I'm actually sad for him, but he has earned every bit of criticism. Sad for him because he genuinely loves the United States. He didn't try to undo the basic dictates of democracy. Here is Donald Trump talking about signing this executive order, that executive order, and he knows very well that the Constitution doesn't allow him to do the things that he's telling his voters he's going to do. These executive orders don't override the Constitution. Get that right. When he says we're going to reverse birth, citizenship, birthright, whatever you want to call it, he is not allowed to do it. The Constitution will be a huge obstacle, and rightly so. So Joe Biden is a constitutionalist, and I think that we've been in this situation as South Africa as well, Mbeki versus Zuma. This is not personal feelings. It's about who respects the Constitution and who doesn't. And Mbeki was a global player, and he was a constitutionalist. And I think we're seeing that same thing in the US. Who would have thought in the
Yeah.
21st century? The fight between constitutionalism and the other. So Joe Biden is that. He's given his life to this country. However, on foreign policy, I think he has failed, and he has failed dismally, especially on the Middle East process. They were not very honest. They ignored what was unfolding in front of our eyes, and he has paid dearly for it because the latest stats show that the Democrats were punished for their stance on the Middle East.
What the Constitution will allow him, though, is those pardons, particularly, of course, freeing even the violent insurrectionists from 4 years ago.
Bongani, it's very important that you say this. There's such hypocrisy. Biden is being criticized for pardoning a whole lot of people who didn't do anything wrong, like Fauci and other who sat on the January 6th panel. He's doing it precisely because he knows who's coming in. He's doing it because he knows that the next guy doesn't care for rules and he will prosecute people for no reason at all. And yet, the January 6th insurrectionists are seen as freedom fighters, as loyal citizens, and so on. And let's not forget that those who were jailed were convicted, some of them. So he is reducing, he's erasing the sentence. I forgot, my English has gone down out the window, but there is a term for, reducing the sentences and also pardoning others.
Commuting,
I'm
yeah.
talking here commuting. Thank you so much. You commute sentences, which means that they will have a criminal record, but they will leave the jails. And then the others, complete pardon. I mean, we are talking more than 1,000 people, 1,500 people who stormed the Capitol. And these are the people he calls patriots. And these are the people he's pardoning. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. We saw what we saw on January 6th. This was not politically motivated. They attacked police officers. Even the guy who got 22 years for hitting a police officer with a baseball bat, he is walking out. That has to offend our basic principles as human beings, regardless of where we stand politically.
Joe Biden warning of a tech industrial complex. We saw, of course, CEOs from Elon Musk to
Oh,
Amazon's Jeff Bezos and even the Google CEO. I mean, some of these guys had better seats at the inauguration than elected officials. Will America heed Biden's warning?
you know what? It's too late. It's too late, darling. And I think sometimes things have to collapse before they can be rebuilt. It is done. These guys are in. They have great influence. They have used their platforms, at least some of them, Elon Musk and Bezos, they've used their platforms to deliver an election to Trump by putting the kind of information online that helped his cause. So it's time for them for him to pay back, as it were. And we know that Trump is not ideological, that he's really not your conventional politician. So he would be attracted to this economic power and this influence that these tech billionaires wield. The difference here is that they're about to stamp their authority on American democracy. And I use that word in inverted commas because it is in peril right now. But these tech billionaires have changed society and they will continue to do so. And you are absolutely right. They had a vantage point at the inauguration, so much so that some lawmakers were not even allowed in. Some were not even allowed in with their spouses.
Wow.
But the joke here in DC is that so many people paid thousands of dollars to see the inauguration live at the National Mall, and they were not allowed to. And the irony, saying this is emblematic, it symbolizes this presidency. Promise the masses something, and then keep close those who have money. So who is the president for ordinary folks? Who's the president of the poor? Trump? I think not.
Your former boss, Ebrahim Rasool, is now our man in Washington. I'm curious to know if you've spoken to him at all, because boy, oh boy, does he have his work cut out for him.
He's got a lot of work to do. In fact, I did interact with him just this evening when the inauguration had just happened, and I said good luck. But for months, we'd known that he was coming back to DC. Look, Ibrahim Rasool was a popular ambassador. You don't have to like him. You don't have to agree with him. He was very popular in DC. But also true is that this was a different DC. It was Obama's DC, and it was a different time. DC has changed. South Africa is on the back foot. There's a lot of animosity towards South Africa. There are a lot of senators, both on the Democrat side, but particularly on the Republican side, that are pushing legislation to punish us for our foreign policy positions, things that will have devastating ramifications. And we need cool heads, sober heads, diplomacy. So Rasool understands his task, but let's not be romantic about his return here to DC. It is a tough time. There's a hostile environment. New kids are new kids. What's the expression? New kid on the block. Yeah,
On the block.
New kids are on the block. Yeah, the White House has changed. Rasool is not going to have an easy job, but he does have allies. South Africa does have allies, especially from a trade point of view, from people who understand the cultural significance, the trade, the importance of trade, and also from U.S. lawmakers who want to keep Russia and China out, who want to dilute their influence on the continent. They will be appealing to Trump to make different decisions. But Bongani, let me just say very quickly, the guy that Trump appointed to head the Africa desk, as it were, in the White House, is very knowledgeable about Africa, very knowledgeable about climate change, has traveled throughout the continent, has worked in a bipartisan for both Democrat and Republican presidents, but he's no friend of South Africa. And it's about to get really, really cold or heated in DC for South Africa. Let's see.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Redi Tlhabi, award-winning international journalist, moderator, and author. I really appreciate you staying up for us. It's about, 1:30 in the morning your time? So for you to be...
I love talking to you.
For you to be this deep and just giving us insight and analysis is fantastic at that hour.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.